All right, today we've got a story for you that honestly feels like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. We're talking about a flight that just vanished back in the 50s, only to pop back up like nothing happened decades later. Yeah, this is the wild legend of the 37-year flight.
Okay, so picture this. You're getting comfy in your airplane seat, ready for a normal, boring flight, and the captain comes on the intercom and says that our flight will take 37 years. What would you even do? It's confusing, right? A little terrifying, maybe? Well, that one single, totally impossible sentence, that's the heart of one of the wildest and most stubborn myths in modern aviation. So, let's get into it with the vanishing act itself, the unsolved mystery of Flight 914. Because this whole story, you see, it doesn't start with a strange landing. Oh no. It starts with a plane just disappearing. A total vanishing act that had investigators scratching their heads for years and years.
And what's so baffling, what really gets you, is just how clean this disappearance was. So here's the timeline. July 2nd, 1955. Pan Am Flight 914 takes off from New York, on its way to Miami. Totally standard trip, should have been about 3 hours. But it never got there. It just, poof, blinked off the radar. No SOS, no distress call, not a single warning, just gone.
And it wasn't just off the radar, it was gone. We're talking about a massive DC-4 aircraft, a huge passenger plane carrying 61 people. It literally just vanished into thin air, and it left nothing behind. No wreckage, no witnesses, zero explanation. So, of course, the investigation was immediate, and it was massive. You had rescue teams scrambling, the Coast Guard scouring the entire Atlantic flight path, but they found nothing. Seriously. Not a single seat cushion, not one piece of the plane. Officially, they had to say something, right? So they concluded it crashed, but with zero evidence, that conclusion meant nothing. The case just went completely cold.
Okay, now for the next part, an impossible return. This is where the story takes a hard left turn from just a sad tragedy into, well, something else entirely, something paranormal. Because decades go by, the world changes, and then something that should be impossible happens.
37 years. Just let that sink in for a second. An entire generation grew up. The whole mystery of Flight 914 was basically just a ghost story by this point, a dusty old file somewhere. Until one random morning down in South America.
So now let's jump ahead. It's September 9th, 1992. We're in the control tower in Caracas, Venezuela. An air traffic controller named Juan de la Corte is just doing his job, probably having a totally normal day. And then a new dot just pops up on his radar screen. It didn't fly in from anywhere, it was just there, like it literally materialized out of thin air. And as this mystery plane gets closer, things in the control tower go from confusing to just bizarre. Because this thing is an absolute aviation anomaly. It's a DC-4 McDonnell Douglas. You know, an old-school plane with propellers, not the jet turbines everything else has. It would be like seeing a horse and buggy suddenly merge onto a 6-lane highway. It just doesn't belong.
But the real, honest-to-goodness shock, that came over the radio. Juan de la Corte, the controller, he gets on the line to hail the pilot, and the message he gets back, it's just chilling. The pilot says, clear as day, "We are Pan Am Flight 914, scheduled to land at the Miami airport at 9:55 a.m. on July 2nd, 1955. He's talking like it's still 1955.
And this is where your brain just starts to melt, right? You've got this totally baffling conversation happening. In the pilot's reality, it's July 2nd, 1955, and he thinks he's right on schedule for Miami. But in the tower's reality, it's September 9th, 1992, and this plane is over 1,000 miles off course. It's like two different timelines. We're literally crashing into each other right there over Caracas.
So, as you can imagine, things escalate fast. The control tower, probably trying to be as gentle as possible, tells the pilot, "Sir, the year is 1992. And pure panic just erupts from the cockpit. The pilot starts shouting, "No, stay away, we're leaving now." He just guns the engines, takes off without any permission, and then, just like that, it's gone. Flight 914 vanishes from the radar again. So, what are we supposed to make of that? A ghost plane stuck in a loop? A real-deal journey through a time warp? It is an absolutely incredible story. But the big question is any of it true?
All right, let's get into the truth behind the tale. Because when a story is this good, this perfectly cinematic, you kind of have to start asking some questions, right? And yeah, this one definitely starts to smell a little fishy.
And here's the answer. The entire story, every single detail we just went through, it all comes from one place. And it's not some official government report or a historical archive. Nope. The whole thing was made up and printed in a wacky American tabloid newspaper called the Weekly World News.
And when you look at the reality, the whole legend just completely falls apart. For starters, the story says the plane reappeared in 1992, right? Well, the newspaper first published the story in 1985, 7 years before it supposedly happened. They even reprinted the story a few times, and each time they changed the details and used a different picture for the so-called eyewitness Juan de la Corte. The bottom line, there is zero, and I mean zero, credible proof that any of this ever happened.
So, if it's so obviously fake, why does the story just refuse to go away? Why do people still share it all over the internet like it's a real thing? Let's talk about why the legend endures, and how a modern myth like this gets made.
Well, this is pretty much how it works. Once the story hit the internet, it just grew and grew. People started adding their own little details to make it sound more believable. You know, you hear stories about passengers who came back but hadn't aged a day, or claims the doctors examined the crew. My favorite is the one about a 1955 pocket calendar that the pilot supposedly dropped on the runway. The crucial thing to remember is that all of these details are just embellishments. They have absolutely no evidence to back them up.
So it all comes down to this one question, doesn't it? What's more powerful, an unbelievable story or a kind of boring, unexciting truth? On one hand, we have the truth. A tabloid newspaper just made something up. On the other, we have this incredible story of a plane that traveled through time. The tale of Flight 914 is, without a doubt, a total hoax. But the fact that it's still around, that it's so powerful, well, that tells us something really fascinating about ourselves and about how much we just want to believe in a good mystery.